Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Around 20 plus years ago, me and 4 of my buddies in our teenage years, 13 or 15 years, were really into exploring abandoned buildings and other such places. We had more than a couple places explored under our belt. We even visited once an abandoned psychiatric hospital that was supposedly haunted, but nothing happened except for a stubbed toe. During our exploration, nothing major ever happened except for one building in which my buddy miraculously avoided falling from the second floor since the floor in one of the buildings collapsed under him. A couple weeks after one of our missions, one buddy tells us that he knows the location of abandoned military bunkers that we can explore. As angsty teenagers that were back then, we, without wasting time, prepared ourselves and headed out to the place the next day. Place was located in a literal bumfuck nowhere. We had to go first using 2 buses to their last stop, had to get a ride, and we still had to go through a lush forest, and the road on foot still took like an hour or so to get there. After our small journey, we found a fence that was clearly ripped in almost half in one of the places. One of our buddies pointed out at the signs on the fence. You know those type of signs that Area 51 has that basically say, military area. We shoot first, then ask questions. Yeah, those type of signs were placed all over. But since we were angsty teenagers that feared nothing, we ignored them and proceeded into the area. Area around the fence, even in the bunker area, was covered with thick foliage, ferns, bushes, trees, the usual suspects, and you couldn't see shit past the foliage. Hell, you probably wouldn't be able to find the place without knowing its location because the foliage was that thick. Anyways, after a short walk, we got into the main bunker area. There were 5 bunkers and 1 hangar type of building there. Each bunker was camouflaged with thick layers of moss and grass, and the hangar had your usual bread and butter khaki type of camouflage on the roof. You wouldn't be able to tell if the area had any type of buildings from a bird's point of view. We made one of the bunkers with a tree growing on top of it as our base of operations. We gathered and hid our belongings there, taking only the most useful stuff: batteries, knives, some rope, flashlights, the usual suspects. Then we started exploring our first bunker. Nothing unusual. This bunker seemed to be used as a living quarter for grunts since first floor was just a huge open space with destroyed and corroded frames after bunk beds and other stuff like that. We wanted to descend to the second level, but it was flooded. Despite being teenagers that aren't afraid of anything, we used our combined intellect to not proceed further into the bunker. We explored the same way for bunkers 2, 3, and 4. We didn't find anything particularly impressive or of value. Maybe some rubble, broken furniture, flooded lower levels, and piece of concrete that gave up due to natural causes. 5th bunker from the get-go felt odd. I can't tell what it was. Maybe the parked in front of the bunker Jeep that was in almost pristine condition, or maybe the fact we had to go full commando and hide in the foliage since we encountered 1 military patrol still in this one place. We all felt odd. This particular bunker was different than the rest. In comparison to the other 4, it was huge. And I mean huge. It had 2 huge places where there were probably some garage doors, probably for tanks and other vehicles. The whole thing was so big you could easily cram in there like 8 tanks or so, and there was still place. Bunker had 2 regular personnel entrances. One was sealed shut with thick doors and we couldn't get it to open. However, the second was wide open. After going through the doors, we did a small check on our equipment, since if your batteries would die, it wouldn't be pleasant, especially 2 to 3 stories underground with no natural light sourced. This is where that odd feeling intensified. We got into a small discussion about that, but after a short argument and calling each other names the like kids we were, we proceeded anyways. Second odd thing happened, since almost simultaneously, all of our flashlights decided to commit seppuku in almost the exact same moment we went past the initial room that was some sort of a hatch. We shrugged it off, replaced batteries and went again, but our fresh batteries died. Literally 1 minute into exploring. We maybe seen like 1 or 2 rooms tops and we had to go back since it's dark as shit. However, my flashlight wasn't shit and didn't rely on batteries only. It had a hidden power cord, compartment to store spare batteries, button for long and short signals and even an Acme-style type of deal level that you could crank to charge it manually in dire situations. So, we started cranking my flashlight, but since that option is literally a last-ditch effort to have some power in it, it wasn't very effective, but enough to light up the corridors and rooms. So, we decided to go in conga-like style, holding each other's arms from behind while the first person held the flashlight and guided us into the bunker. First floor was nothing unusual from the inside. One room was flooded and covered in some weird-looking moss and was mostly empty. One was some sort of an office and the remaining 2 rooms appeared to be a small storage unit and toilets. There was a flight of concrete stairs leading to the next level, so we proceeded to the second floor. Immediately upon descending, it became fucking freezing down there. Nothing weird, since we were like 15 to 20 meters under the ground, but it was a bit strange since this was in the middle of the summer and temps easily reached 30 Celsius in the shadows. The second floor was mostly empty, one corridor leading from one stairs to another with rooms that were mostly empty. The only thing of value we found was a piece of an old newspaper. That was like 10 years old, but in its current condition, we weren't able to read almost anything else on it, plus it literally crumbled upon being touched. One of us started to feel this feeling that could be associated to regular fear, but as teenagers and calling each other names again, he manned up and followed us further. We started descending to the third floor. The area seemed to be the same as upper floor, one corridor, stairs behind us and at the end of the corridor and like 10 doors that lead to different rooms. From which 2 of the doors were leading to the same space that probably was used as a living area in the past, we could tell by the remains of basic furniture. Nothing of value and particular interest was there, so we slowly started creeping towards stairs leading to the 4th floor. At this moment, hairs on my body stood up out of nowhere and this weird feeling became even more apparent. We didn't even insult each other, we were a bit freaked out at this point, but anyways we decided to descend anyway. On floor 4, it seemed to be the exact same copy of the previous floor with one big difference. In place where a flight of stairs should be leading deeper, was a T-section which led to different parts of the bunker, but it was completely flooded and we couldn't proceed further. We took maybe a couple steps into the floor, when our leading buddy stopped and started to crank the flashlight since it obviously started to run out of juice and was flashing like it was set to send an SOS signal. While the first person in the column was cranking the flashlight, we started to talk about some shit like teenagers and one of us checked what hour it was. Since we took our sweet-ass time exploring, it would be nice to know when we would need to stop in order to get a bus back home. Suddenly my hair stood up once more and what I felt back then, could be described as a flight of fight type of response. Out of the blue I was scared like hell while 2 of my buddies in the column started shaking uncontrollably like they'd be scared shitless themselves. Also I didn't ask but noticed one small detail. Despite this being an abandoned bunker there were still sounds there. We were still accompanied by the usual sounds of water droplets hitting some surface. But suddenly it became dead silent. You could even barely hear us breathing. Buddy in the front asked the shaking buddies, "The F is wrong with you guys?" One of them simply pointed forward. We had little to no light like 30 meters or more below the ground since he was still trying to charge the flashlight. At the spot he was pointing at, one blue-like orb that was obviously emitting light appeared. In my country, there are no glowworms since winters can be very harsh and they'd simply die out. But in front of us maybe like 40 meters away was this fucking source of light that simply was floating. We stood scared shitless watching it. Then 2 more orbs came from the T-section, floating at approximately same height as the first one. Buddy called us cowards because we're scared of some bugs. One of us retorted, "Dude, glowworms don't live in our country. Not in fucking bunkers of all things. then the slow realization came to us. Those orbs were perfectly floating still in place and started slowly creeping towards us in a straight line. At that moment of clarity, we ran. We ran like hell from there, almost tripping each other on the way out. Once we ran away, all those odd and weird feelings stopped. We took a small break and the flashlight with the crank suddenly started working properly again. We didn't give a fuck. We went to our base of operations, packed our stuff and simply bolted from the place. Another weird thing happened on our way out. While we exited the bunker, the weather was 100% clear, not a single cloud in sight whatsoever. However, 30 minutes on our way back I noticed something weird and pointed it to our buddies on top of the area in which the bunkers were located. Suddenly a huge cloud appeared seemingly out of nowhere. It's just a cloud, you pansy. But the cloud suddenly made this O shape in the center of itself, and this like ray of light was descending from it on the area we just ran away from. We didn't talk about stuff we've seen on the way out. We never believed in anything paranormal or anything of the sorts, but stuff we've seen and felt, our feeble teenage minds couldn't explain in any way, shape or form. The more I think about this story, the more questions pop up in my head. 1. How in the fuck my teenage buddy knew location of this place in literal nowhere and how to get to it? Like I previously said, this place was properly masked even if abandoned, so you'd need to know the exact location of it to find it, in phones, especially the high-tech ones at that time, didn't have GPS functions and internet access on them was something unheard of. 2. This place was abandoned, but it still was fenced off, and if unlucky you could meet a patrol of fully armed soldiers there. 3. The place couple years later, when I went back to it, was fucking gone. No bunkers, no hangar, even the concrete roads were stripped. The place was just a patch of foliage in the middle of nowhere. None of us believed in anything paranormal before that, and you'd be marked as weird for even suggesting such things. But this experience opened my eyes a little bit.
Be me, at 10 years old. At a small local amusement park with the family, enjoying ingesting some of that deep-fried carny food that makes even the biggest land whale say, "No thanks, I'm full." Family and I walked past this facade covered in cartoon demons with pitchforks and skulls and shit like that, basically one of those old-fashioned dark rides. Pointed out to the family, they decide it'll be a fun ride since I was terrified of roller coasters but loved Halloween. We get in the little cart, and the ride operator sends us into the ride. It's about what you'd expect from an old haunted house ride: cheesy pipe organ music, spiderwebs and skulls in every corner, occasional jump scares. Basically what I'm trying to say is that it was very family-friendly, stuff you'd see in a Scooby-Doo cartoon or something. Which is exactly why I was caught off guard when I saw a guy standing in the corner of one of the scenes. Not a spooky skeleton, or a monster or anything. Just a guy in a plaid shirt and jeans with an emotionless look on his face. Staring at me with hollow eyes that didn't even blink once. Keep in mind that this was in a dark fucking room in a moving vehicle with a bunch of noises going off, so I only really saw him for about 9 seconds. What the fuck? Before I could really process what I saw, the car turns into the next scene, your usual fare of spoopy pipe organ music and animatronics that barely work. Ride ends. We go outside, and I ask my mom about the guy standing in the corner. She has no idea what I'm talking about, Dad doesn't either. I get agitated, so my mom decided to ask the ride operator about the guy I saw. Employee sighs like he's heard this before. Basically says nobody could have been inside because the only entrance is the swinging door the cars enter through, and even if somebody got out of their car there's cameras. Mom basically says,
"Sorry about my dumb son."
And we continue our day. I still think about this every now and then, and it still weirds me out.
I grew up in the country. Old Victorian style house, like Pick related, only more of a piece of shit, and smaller. Me and my older sister used to see tall gray figures on the huge wraparound porch. They looked like long, foggy shadows of people. They would literally just mill about for a while and then disappear. Always a big group of them. They didn't scare us, but our parents couldn't see them, I think. I remember my older sister, 13, telling me, 11, not to tell mom and dad because they wouldn't believe us. Anyway, sometimes they would appear inside. These times felt a lot scarier than when they were on the porch. Both my sister and I hated it when they showed up in the house. We'd always be playing, or doing something when suddenly we'd feel watched. We'd look over to find one of them standing there, watching us. I would usually run to my room. The things wouldn't ever go in there for some reason, so that became my go-to hiding spot. Also, I used to wake up regularly for no reason in the middle of the night. I would get out of bed and know that I had to go stand by the stairs. IDK how I knew this, but I would do it every time. From the top of the stairs I'd look down at the front door. It always felt like I was waiting for someone to open the door and come inside, but it never happened. Also, there's something that my sister and I both remember, but that's hard to explain to other people. Sometimes the things would look foggy, but then suddenly they'd have a bunch of depth to them. One time, when I caught one watching me play with my toys, I noticed that its body looked long, like a hallway. We moved out when I was about 13, so I don't remember much else.
I used to sort of work with this big, brawny Mexican guy named Augustin. I was driving trucks at the time and had some deliveries to a ranch he worked at. We both got along really well, and sometimes Augustin would toss me a cut of nice meat. He had access to a bunch of it. One day I saw him and he seemed a little off, so I didn't bug him, just made my delivery and left. Next time he's back to his normal self. I ask him what was up with him last time. He straight up asks, "Do you believe in witches?" I tell him no. He says he doesn't either, but that in Mexico there's a belief that witches can assume the shapes of animals. There's one that takes the shape of an owl. So he tells me this story. According to him, he's working late one day. It's well after dark when he's leaving the ranch and heading down a small road, headed home. But he realizes he left something behind, so he turns around. About a minute later he spots a lady walking along the side of the road very quickly. He's shocked to find a woman walking out alone so late. And she looks old, which makes it stranger. Plus, he just drove down this road coming the opposite way and didn't see anybody. It's like the old lady appeared out of nowhere. But Augustin, being a good guy, is more concerned about the woman than anything else. He pulls up alongside her and rolls down his window. He asks if she needs a ride. The woman is wearing a dark shawl, so he can't see her face. But she turns to look directly at him and he sees that she has the face of a bird. At first he thinks it's a mask, but he can see the feathers moving as she walks and everything. He hits the brakes and thinks, WTF is that? But when he looks around, the woman is gone. There's nothing but him and the empty road.
Been thinking about writing up my spookiest experience for some time. Might as well be me. No more than 12. Living in an Eastern European shithole. Communism might be gone, but it left the country a few decades of development behind the rest of the civilized world and very rural. Get on to a school trip to the mountainside. Every day of the trip we go visit someplace else in the region before returning to our hotel. Just a 2-floor concrete cube in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. Literally on a small hill clearing surrounded by forests for tens of miles. I end up in one of the second-floor rooms, first floor for Brits. The rooms are spacious but empty, just a single large closet to dump our stuff, a few single beds spaced out perpendicular to opposite sides of the wall, and one large window. We keep the window half open because of an ungodly heat. Right outside our window stands a single tall tree. Night one, we learn that one of our classmates is a sleep talker. He lets it out in his sleep that his father is beating him. We make fun of him for being a wimp because domestic violence is the standard here. Night 2. Dosing off. Suddenly snap out of it. Open my eyes and look up without moving. Need a second to adjust because the beds on my side of the room don't get as much moonlight as the other side. There's a dark figure standing ominously over me. Fuck. Fight or flight kicks in. I instantly spring out of the bed. Clock the figure where its head should be. Shove it into the open closet and lock it. The lights turn on. Everybody is half sitting looking terrified. Then they burst out laughing. Notice Chris is missing. They dared him to spook me. Night 3 is uneventful. Night 4. It should be noted that I've been having trouble falling asleep. I've always been, but the heat is making it much harder still. That and the shadows cast by the tree outside the window and its occasional rustling are creeping me out. I tell myself that it's just my imagination and close my eyes to ignore it. Spend a good 15 minutes waiting for sleep to come but no luck. Hear the window slowly creaking. Must be the wind, ignore it. Can't ignore it for long. While staying as still and quiet as possible, I slowly open my eyes. I want to say I wish I hadn't, but it's probably a good thing that I did. Leaning in through the window, from the waist up, is something that made me put security roller shutters in my windows for the rest of my life. The moonlight illuminated it too well for comfort. Coupled with good eyesight and how close it was, my imagination didn't even get an opportunity to fill in the blanks. It's humanoid, with wrinkly gray skin. Its torso and arms are visibly stretched out and continue slowly stretching as it's moving to hover over the closest bed on the opposite side. Its hands are long, bony and not so much clawed as tipped with overgrown human nails. It's pretty clear the hands are what was casting the shadows I desperately hoped could have been tree branches all along. It's got a pair of extremely saggy its. Second time I got to see it in my life. Its head was adorned with a clump of very thin, wispy hair down to its shoulders. After what felt like forever but was probably just a very surreal 5 seconds, it stops stretching and slowly turns its head towards me. No way it noticed me, right? Right? Slowly enough that I also get an uncomfortably good look at its face. It's mostly human, except for the round, bulging eyes. And how the bottom half of its skull extends down and forward to make room for a set of massive, horse-like teeth. It makes eye contact with me and flashes me a look of surprise, forehead wrinkling as if to raise eyebrows it didn't have and mouth opening slightly to gasp. The surprised expression quickly changed. The mouth turned to an intimidating grin, but the look in its eyes was patronizing. Kindly, even. It raises a finger to its mouth in a shushing motion. Then slowly contracts itself out of the window. I can hear it drop down the full height from the tree, then run off on long bipedal footsteps. Needless to say, I did not sleep that night.
This is kinda mundane, but it's my only paranormal experience, probably just me being anxious. Also my first ex-post. Walking back to my dorm from campus, about a 25 minutes walk, decide to walk through the park by the river. As soon as I approach the bridge leading to the path by the river, I get an ominous feeling. Start praying in my head even though I'm not religious, just had heard stories of protecting people from paranormal events. As I walk by the river, I feel like something's watching me. I keep looking over my shoulder, at the shrubs, etc. Feel kinda chilly. Get to the part of the path where a main road cuts through the park. The path continues on the other side of the road. Cross the road. Out of the pitch darkness of the path ahead of me, an old man starts walking straight toward me, too dark to make out his face, but he starkly reminds me of the woodsman from Twin Peaks. Get a chill down my spine. Immediately turn right and start speed walking down the road. I look behind me, and he's gone. Looked at where he possibly could have gone, nothing. Anyway, it was probably just a homeless man, plus me being an anxious freak. But considering how scared I was and the ominous feeling that preceded it, I'm willing to think it was a very mild paranormal event. Also, the way he approached me was kinda strange. I've had a similar experience, probably not paranormal yet, but caught me off guard and made me near shit myself laughing after it happened.
2 years ago. walking around the suburb I grew up in late at night with a now former friend. Basically, we were supposed to go to a pub and deliver a stand-up show, but got kicked out because underaged. So I got mad and walked around the city and the surrounding suburbs late at night. Go to this one spooky park I hadn't visited in years, that I'd previously managed to find because I had a dream about it and it was where I thought it would be. Park rangers forgot to lock the gates at sunset like they were supposed to, so it's now near midnight, peering in. After about 3 meters all light fails to penetrate, pitch black. Even the ubiquitous stolen trolleys seem to not want to go into the park, they are bunched up outside the park, none inside. Swinging my powerful torch around to try and see what's in the darkness because spooked. Nothing, it's deadly still and silent. We ease up, chuckle, turn around and start to leave. As we turn around, a well-groomed guy in a parka, probably about 6'5", power walks out of the darkness at incredible speed and pushes between us. "Excuse me, gents." Power walks into the distance and over the horizon in a matter of seconds. A few seconds of panicked silence, followed by the adrenaline wearing off and us losing our shit laughing, joking that we'd just had a run-in with Satan. Good times, wish the rest of the night hadn't been so shitty though. Really brought the experience down, nearly getting jumped by thugs and having to deal with former bro's constant bitching and whining when he was the one who got us into that mess.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Oh.